Back now with Senators Evan Bayh and Lindsay Graham. Joining us, two veteran observers of the Washington scene, Dan Balz of the Washington Post, Jim VandeHei, executive editor of Politico. Dan, I was listening to these two senators just now and thinking, wouldn't it be great if the Senate sort of operated like these two are talking this morning?
Well, it probably would work a lot better than it certainly works now, but I think neither of these gentlemen are free operators. They're part of a much larger system that is terribly polarized, very highly partisan, that has outside forces pushing them not to cooperate but to confront one another. And so it's very difficult for an individual senator or a couple of individual senators to overcome that.
How did it get this way?
Well, I think part of it is most of the country is somewhere between the two of you. Yeah, most of the Congress is on the other side. And I'd be curious from you, Senator Graham, two things. Like, one, you're one of the few Republicans right now who's genuinely trying to work on some of the big issues: energy, immigration, and some of the terror issues.
There's some others. Corkers are working on financial regulation.
But you're probably one of the most prominent. Like, one thing, how much flack are you taking from your Republican colleagues? Because when I talk to them, wow, you know, Lindsey Graham's showboating. Lindsey Graham's just trying to raise his profile. How much flack do you take? And what happened to John McCain, who used to be like Lindsey Graham? Now he's almost indistinguishable from Mitch McConnell.
Well, John McCain is the most prominent Republican in the country, and anytime he speaks, people listen, and he's taken the role of basically defending against the excesses of the Obama administration on the stimulus, on health care, and other things. What I've tried to do is just continue to be me the best I can. I can throw elbows with the best of them, but when it comes to the war, young men and women are serving overseas. We're letting them down when we fight about detainee policy and make it irrational when it should be rational. When it comes to energy and climate, we've got a great chance to do a deal to create jobs. So I'm just going to keep being me. I get a lot of flack. The idea of closing Gitmo upsets a lot of people on our side, but I'm convinced it's the best thing for the country.
Senator, go ahead, Senator.
Well, I think Jim mentioned the most important thing at the beginning when you said most of the people in the country are somewhere between, Lindsay and myself. What needs to happen here ultimately is that those people who really care about practical progress, who aren't strident ideologues or partisans, need to stand up. And if people are behaving out here in ways that are excessively partisan or ideological, they need to make a change so that the folks who run these kinds of ads aren't the only ones driving this debate.
But the system doesn't produce those type of politicians in the most cases, because in the House, where I got to know you in the mid-1990s, the way the redistricting process works, you essentially guarantee yourself that you're going to get a bunch of ideologues who are not representative of the country. They're representative of the extremes of both parties. And because of the unattractiveness sometimes of the Senate to governors and other folks, there's more and more House members in there. So it seems the Senate's even gotten more toxic.
The gerrymander has really destroyed the House. 50 seats, 60 seats at most are competitive in the general election. What's done this to the Senate, many things, but among them are the campaign finance rules, where you have this perpetual campaign, you're raising money all the time, and so that's one of the things, and we got to look at, and it's about to get worse because of the Supreme Court decision. You can look at what's happening to Blanche Lincoln in Arkansas as sort of the first step in the Senate being pulled to the far left and the far right.
Well, let me just ask Dan Balz this question. Do you think that part of this is simply because the president asked the country to maybe digest more than it could digest at one point? Did he ask for too much in a short time?
Well, I think in retrospect he probably did, and certainly the health care battle has been a traumatic political event for the Congress and for the entire country. Were it not for that, we might be talking about a somewhat more collegial set of discussions and negotiations on Capitol Hill than we're seeing. But I mean, one of the realities is that since 1994, every election has been about whether control of one chamber or the other might happen. And when you are trying to legislate in that environment, the political forces and the political calculations take precedence over substantive discussions.
Does all of this go back to the money? I mean, do people have to raise so much money to get here that they have to sign off with so many interest groups before they come to Washington, Senator Graham, that they can't compromise once they're here?
A lot of it is you sort of give away your political soul to get here. You've signed pledge after pledge to get the PAC funding. The next thing you know, the issue's up here that you signed a pledge on, and there's a middle ground and people raise holy hell. But the worst is yet to come, as Evan said, with the Supreme Court case. But let's just remember this. Was Ted Kennedy moderate? No. Was he effective? Yes. Was Strom Thurmond Moderate? No. Was he effective? Yes. Joe Biden spoke at Senator Thurman's funeral. I worked with Ted Kennedy on one or two things that mattered for the country, like immigration. You can be very liberal, you can be very conservative, but you also can be very effective. That's what we're losing up here, the willingness to be effective.
I will give you the last word, Senator Bayh.
Well, we're living at a time, Bob, where we have great challenges facing our country, and many of them are external. The economic challenges, the debt that's accumulating is unsustainable, our energy challenges that Lindsay's attempting to work on, all the wealth we're shifting abroad. Our political process is stuck at a time when we need to be moving. And that is to the great peril of our country. And that's why, let's start with the lunches, let's look at fundraising reform, possibly adjusting the filibuster, some of these things that will allow us to act in pragmatic ways. It's manifestly in the best interests of the country.
Do you think it can change, Senator Graham?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an American. There's nothing we can't do together, and if we don't work together, there's nothing we're going to do.